This is James Randi, and you're listening to The Skeptic Zone.
Welcome to The Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason. Here are your hosts, Richard Saunders and Stefan Soiken.
Hello, Richard.
Hey, Steph.
It's great to see you again.
Here we are, back on the Skeptic Zone. Good to see you. You haven't been involved with the intros for a little while.
Oh, I know. I've had a little bit of time off, went overseas and did a bit of research in Hong Kong and all sorts of things. But yeah, it's good to be back and actually be in the same room with you instead of all this virtual stuff.
All this virtual stuff. But thank you for that great interview with Tim Minchin.
Thank you for letting me interview him.
It was fantastic.
It was a lot of fun, and he's a great guy, and I think we had a good old chat there.
Yeah, he's a top bloke. I saw his show. And also, you posted up the video of that interview. Yes,
I did the unedited version, because for audio you have to sort of chop it up a little bit. But this is just me and him just hanging out together and having a good old chat, and it's cool.
And that's available at skepticzone.tv or your YouTube channel.
My YouTube channel, of course, but you can click through to that and see some other funny stuff as well if you want. But yeah, we're into show 28. Unbelievable. This show just keeps going and going.
And welcome to May, and what a show. Oh. I know I say this every time.
Oh, you do, but this time I think you're outstripping yourself again. This is a bumper show.
This really is a bumper show, and it kicks off with our interview with Stephen Fry.
The Stephen Fry?
The same.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, yes. And he'll be talking to our reporter, Kylie Sturgis, and we can't thank him enough. He was so nice and generous with his time, and the interview is one of the best we've done. It's fantastic.
What a scoop.
What a scoop. Great interview with Stephen Fry coming up. That's followed by a report from the Charles Darwin exhibition here in Sydney.
Not the Sydney exhibition in Darwin.
Not the Sydney exhibition in Darwin, but the Darwin exhibition
in Sydney. Excellent. So what sort of what is it? Just his works, his personal belongings? Or
what? Some of those, and his sales and the history of Darwin and what he did, and lots of relics and pieces and models of the beagle.
Wow. Then this is touring the world, is it?
I think it's a permanent exhibition in Sydney, or it is for the moment. Anyway.
Oh, excellent. Well, look forward to that.
We'll talk about that. Then a very important Dr. Rachie. Very important Dr. Rachie. She's going to be tackling some pretty heavy issues to do with vaccination and children at risk.
It's going a bit crazy at the moment, isn't it? People not vaccinating their kiddies and all sorts of troubles happening there.
Anyway, Dr. Rachie, as ever, will give us the inside scoop on that. Another inside scoop. We've got one of the first previews and reviews of Star Trek.
Whoa.
Our reporter Michael Wallahan was one of the privileged few to go to the Opera House a few weeks ago to see the world premiere.
Was he invited by the Borg or the Klingon?
I think the Vulcans, actually.
The Vulcans invited him?
Yeah, but he got
privileged
to go.
Man. Yeah.
I'm jealous as hell, but he'll be telling us all about Star Trek.
I can't wait to see it myself.
I can't wait to hear the review.
Yeah.
Then we'll have a report from our friend, of our friend Ian Bryce and his Pope-mobile.
Oh, that was a good old stunt, wasn't it?
That was a good stunt. Yeah. This is Ian Bryce, who had a fake Pope-mobile. He drove around Sydney to annoy the Catholics and the Pope, I think, and he was taken to court.
He was charged.
And we're going to find out what happened in this episode.
Oh, goodness me.
And that'll be followed by the Think Tank.
The Think Tank, of course. Yet another good old swashbuckling adventure in a bar somewhere.
Now, just before we kick off with Stephen Fry, a quick mention that Dr. Rachie and myself will be heading down to Melbourne to give some talks on the 30th of May. Sydney talks to Melbourne.
It's lovely to see the dialogue going between the two arch enemies.
They're our dear friends, the Young Australian Skeptics. Now, their website is skeptics.com, and you can find out all about the upcoming talks in Melbourne.
Great site too, yeah. So a bumper episode. Stephen Fry, Darwin, everybody.
The Pope.
It's all happening.
Let's not delay.
Let's get into it.
I'm Kylie Sturgis, and it is my great pleasure to be talking to Stephen Fry for the Skeptic Zone. Stephen Fry is well known as an English actor, comedian, author, television presenter and director. During his university years, he teamed up with Hugh Laurie to appear on a whimsical sketch show entitled A Bit of Fry and Laurie. He has written several very well-received books, including The Liar, The Hippopotamus, and half an autobiography called Moab is My Washpot. More recently, he produced a scholarly but friendly guide to understanding and writing poetry entitled The Ode Less Travelled. You will have also seen him in popular TV shows like Blackadder, Jeeves and Wooster, and the popular quiz show QI. Stephen Fry spent a very short time in Australia whilst filming his next project, and we're very proud to have him on the Skeptic Zone podcast, telling us all about it. Firstly, you have just returned from a lengthy round-the-world investigation based upon a book that Douglas Adams described as the most favourite book he's written. It was called Last Chance to See, and it was written back in 1990. So what inspired you to recreate the journey that he and Mark Hawardine completed?
Yes, Douglas did describe Last Chance to See as his favourite book in some ways, and I think that's because it changed his life. His second chapter, if you like, he sadly never had a third one because of his early death, but I know how important it was to him to go around the world and to look at these extraordinary habitats and the rare creatures that relied on them, and caring for the disappearing species was something that he devoted a lot of time for latterly. Now, what inspired me to recreate Douglas and Mark Hawardine's journey was, well, it was a number of things. One, it was Douglas's family who came to me and asked if I could go on the journey again. And two, it was a desire I've always had to go into the wild and visit creatures. Like so many people of my generation and subsequent generations, I grew up on natural history on television, and it never occurred to me that I would ever actually be in, the savannah of Kenya looking at lions close by, that I could be with hippopotamuses and gorillas, with lemurs and with rare birds, and diving with turtles, and see all these amazing things, blue whales breaching in front of my very eyes. All these things that I've seen have affected me profoundly, and I can see why they affected Douglas. It's been really remarkable. You ask what the most influential experience I've seen so far has been. It's very hard to say. There are one or two moments which bring one close to as ecstatic and euphoric state as one can ever experience without the intervention of something pharmaceutical or alcoholic. I think the sight of hundreds of turtle hatchlings, green turtle hatchlings, that was an extraordinary sight, streaming out of their nest over the dunes and into the sea. It's an extraordinary life cycle that these giant turtles have, as I have no doubt you know. This was off the coast of Malaysia. And it's not until they're about 25 that the female turtle is capable of laying eggs, is capable of... The turtle is fertile, as they would say in America. And they mate with the males, and then they swim in on not necessarily moonlit nights. There's a great mistaken belief that it's all keyed to some biodynamic phase of the moon. It's not actually true. They come usually to the place where they were born 25 years earlier. They crawl up the sea. They haven't been on land since they were born. They crawl up with their flippers onto the beach, and then they find a dune somewhere, under a tree perhaps, somewhere sheltered. And they dig and they dig and they dig, and then deep down they lay 80 to 100, sometimes 120 eggs, and cover them up with their flippers. It's an extraordinary sight. I was right next to one doing that, right behind it in pitch black, with a little lens that allowed me to see in the dark. So we didn't put it off. And watching this huge animal, this beautiful amphibious animal, there on land, just driven by this massive imperative to lay its eggs. Incredible sight. Covered them up and then eased its way back. It took an hour and a half. Eased its way back into the water, and away it went. And then those eggs were going to stay there for 6 weeks. And according to how well the mother had laid them, in other words, according to depth, the cooler they are, the more likely they are to be male. The warmer they are, the more likely they are to be female. There's an absolute rule about that. Out they stream. And at the moment they're quite warm, and there are a huge number of women compared to men, which is a better way around than the other. But it's a bit worrying. It's just a bit too warm at the moment. So they're hoping that a few more males will be born. Anyway, that was a sight, to watch those hatchlings, tiny little things streaming across, just made perfectly. I mean, they fit into the centre of the palm of your hand, they look like little things that you put in the bath made of clockwork. And they're just machines that do one thing. They struggle upwards all at the same time, and they have this instinct to go to the sea. It's phenomenal. No one quite knows why it is. There are all kinds of interesting features to it. One is that around the hatcheries, where they've been artificially developed to stop poaching and various other things in the early days, now they're fortunately allowed to do it the natural way more and more, but there are still hatcheries, and the hatcheries now no longer have any metal anywhere near them because they realise that if they interfere with the sensitive magnetic detection systems built into these turtles, they won't know exactly where they are. What they do is they take a bearing, essentially, according to magnetic north. And that's how they know to get back 25 years later. It's astonishing, isn't it? Anyway, I've spoken a lot about it, but perhaps that was one of the most exciting moments.
This is, of course, not the first documentary you've taken part in. There's one called HIV and Me, where you investigate attitudes towards the disease, and another which has played recently on Australian television called The Secret Life of the Manic Depressive. These are all very personal and powerful documentaries, which must be a significant factor in your choosing to create them.
Well, you've said it yourself, and the word personal, they are personal to me, and that's what compels one, I suppose. I would be less compelled to tell a story about something that had no particular history or resonance with me. I'm not saying I wouldn't. If someone said, would you do this documentary on, I don't know, motor neuron disease? It's possible I would consider it, but naturally I'm more drawn to things where I have some experience that I can bring to bear. Otherwise, why would I be the one to make the documentary? I suppose the best kind of documentary, it seems to me, or at least a documentary of this nature, is one that is a personal testimony. So that's what drew me to it. And I suppose there was an element in me that hoped there might be some form of catharsis in making it. But I've been very pleased at the way people have responded to both of them. The one on depression seems to have shown how large and yet how unspoken an issue it is for so many people.
In your newest documentary, Last Chance to See, apparently there's an account of a healing ceremony in Madagascar, which is something you've touched upon before in your novel, The Hippopotamus. Why do you think that pseudoscientific claims, such as holistic healing, continue to be popular across cultures and time, despite the advances in medicine?
Well, my interpretation is no more valid than anybody else's. I guess I would say, in terms of medicine, people want to take control of their own lives, and ironically, they seem to think they're taking control of their lives more by using so-called complementary or alternative medicine than by using what now is considered orthodox medicine. In other words, they think it's a statement of originality and individuality, if you like. To us, it seems self-evidently ridiculous, but the claims of things like what do they call it? I can't even remember its name, homeopathic medicine. I mean, really, that's just so preposterous. And yet people I know and respect insist on believing it. And who knows? The powers of the placebo are so strong that maybe it's wrong of us to mock, wrong of us to call the thing the lie, because the moment you say it, then it falls to pieces and it loses its power the moment you say it's a placebo. I'm a great believer in double-blind random testing, which is the basis of all drug testing and the basis of all proper testing of any of the property of anything that's supposed to have an effect. Why do people still insist on things like holistic healing and whatever that have no real basis in evidence? Because they want to. It's as simple as that. Because they want it to be true. If you're dying of cancer or you're very, very ill and you feel there's nothing that can be done, then naturally you'll cling to a straw. Myself, I feel pretty dark thoughts about the kind of people who throw straws at dying, drowning men and women, and I'm sure most of us would. It seems to me a pretty lousy thing to do. Some people perhaps believe in the snake oil they sell, or at least have allowed themselves to believe in it. And because, of course, people... I mean, that's why James Randi's so good, because he knows what magicians know. He knows that if you do a card trick on someone, they will probably say to someone else, it was unbelievable. I thought of a card and then signed it, and he ripped it up and it appeared in an envelope. And they described the effect that the magician wanted. And they miss out all the steps in between that seemed irrelevant because the magician made them irrelevant. So they didn't notice them. In the same way that people will swear that a clairvoyant has mentioned the name of their aunt, and it just came out of nowhere. And they will be astonished when you show them clips that show that 32 names were said before the name of their aunt, none of which they remembered, and none of which had any effect on them. That's because it's what they wanted. They wanted the trick to work. They wanted to hear their aunt's name. And so they forgot all the times it wasn't their aunt. In the same way as people forget all the dreams in which something happens or a person appears that then has no relevance to their lives, but they only remember the one dream out of 9,000 in which they dream of someone they haven't thought of for ages whom they see the next day. Well, I would be astounded if there were no coincidences like that in the world. And people say that's somehow close-minded of me. I don't know. Maybe it is.
Of course, it's not just the pseudosciences that pervade. There's also paranormal beliefs. And here we have some audio footage from a 1991 television show called James Randi, Psychic Investigator, that played in the UK. And you appeared in this with your friend, Hugh Laurie. Now, it's from nearly 20 years ago, and I was wondering if you're very surprised that the same beliefs exist today.
I think it's an insult to the human spirit, this specious bullshit. And I think people should be angry about it. I think it is really degrading. I think it's largely exploitative. It's not perhaps as bad as spiritualist mediums, but it covers the same ground of the poor, bewildered people who are told by the astrologer that somehow they're important and extraordinary because the whole universe was poised in a unique state just at the moment of their birth. 20 years ago, Crick and Watson discovered the double helix that this man has been going on about. They won the Nobel Prize for it, and they formed the basis of the science of genetics. Oh, we'll have that too. We'll add that into our specious, semi-pseudo-scientific drivel. And I think people should be angry about it because it's nonsense.
Am I surprised, you wonder, that almost 20 years later, pseudosciences such as astrology and many others still enjoy popularity? No, I'm not surprised. I know, I hope, enough about history and human nature to agree that there's one born every minute, and to know that there is a desperation to make sense, and that making sense of the universe isn't easy, and making sense of our own lives isn't easy. And there are different ways of doing it. We can make sense of our own lives by observation of people. And we can do that by reading novels and poetry, by looking at painting, listening to music, allowing our mind to concentrate on the experiences we've had and the observations we've made about how people behave. And then in a wider sense, looking at the world, we can try and make observations about how animals behave and what they look like and why they look like it. And we can make observations about why rain falls from the sky and why all kinds of phenomena occur. And we can do this by observation and by experiments and repetition and by understanding, essentially what we call the scientific method, the empirical method, more importantly. Or we can cheat. We can just say, oh, there's an invisible person who makes it all happen. Or there's stars tell you, or it's all predestined, or it's something to do with the power of the mind, which isn't the power of learning, but is a power that's inborn. In other words, you can be lazy. You can say, I'm not going to bother to find out how numbers work or to learn by observation how animals work. I'm just going to say it's all according to some vibration or some crystal or some. It's sad, but people naturally want to cut corners, much as water wants to go the shortest route to the sea. So human beings want to go the shortest route to the truth. Unfortunately, it takes them the shortest route to bullshit, to the great ocean of bullshit that lies out there, and all those people who are prepared to make money out of them. So all the cold reading clairvoyants and all the nonsensical astrologers and absurd ESP merchants and other such people who talk about vibration and energy. God, if there's a word that drives me mad, it's people using energy in a lazy, nonsensical sense. Anyway, don't get me started. I know you're the Sydney Skeptics, and I know skepticism is something you want to speak about, but I get almost unreasonable, and I don't want to turn into a shrill, shall we say, Richard Dawkins-like person who slightly overdoes it and makes people angry. Let's just say that, to me, the true mystery of the universe is something that is available to all, not through the arcane rules of some nonsensical, unprovable drivel, but is there with your eyes. It's there to see by just simply recognizing observable laws and repeatable instances of things like sunsets and how they work, and seeing what we've done on the basis of that understanding. So every time you flick a light switch or turn on a GPS, you have to realise on what that GPS is predicated, on the science and observation without which a GPS couldn't possibly work. The fact that the Earth must be round, the fact that it must move at this speed, the fact that geostationary orbit means this, the fact that triangulation means that. All these things tell us so much about how science is right. It's a theology that makes machines work, but it's a theology that doesn't tell us how to behave and doesn't have the impertinence to assume that we are all born guilty.
You are also the host of a TV show called QI, which stands for Quite Interesting, and it's been described as a comedy panel quiz, and yet it could also very well be called a show that questions illogical thinking and odd beliefs. Do you consider comedy to be a way in for people to challenge irrational thinking?
Well, I think there's an element to that, in as much as comedy is always about the real. Philosophers or religionists will make abstract statements, and a comedian say, well, is that true on a Wednesday? You know, comedians want an example, a cut and dried example of the fact of the world, because comedy is about observation 9 times out of 10, as is science. It's about repeatable patterns. It's about testing some statement that is made, a preposterous statement. I remember G.K. Chesterton, who was essentially a comic writer. He said, he wrote an essay once where he said, it was called On Feminism or something, and it was in the early days of feminism, very early 20th century. He said, I read this sentence. It says, "At the trumpet call of Ibsen and Shaw, modern woman rises to take her place in society." And I think to myself, well, that's a marvellous claim, and I hope it's true. Who? Let me try and think of a modern woman. Oh, well, there's Mrs. Waybeloved, who scrubs my floors on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. She lives in Clapham, and she's a modern woman. She has 7 children, and she works very hard scrubbing floors. And if I say, at the trumpet call of Ibsen and Shaw, Mrs. Waybeloved rises to take her place in society, I realise the statement is not only nonsense, it's pernicious nonsense. And that's the point. Statements made of grandeur and abstract truth are always tested by comedians. So in that sense, comedy is a very good way, yes, to get the credulous on side, if you like, because it says, is that really true? Is it true? Let's see.
Finally, your love of technology is well known. You've written for many years on technology in a variety of publications. You have a very popular podcast called Podgrams that's available on your website and on iTunes. Now, recently you've embraced Twittering and written about the experience and have even been the focus of media attention because of it. Do you think that your love of technology is an important part of your appeal to your audience? And what do you hope for technological advances in the future?
Yes, I think my audience does share my interest in technology. At least those that don't have stopped being my audience. That's the way audiences work, really, isn't it? What do I hope for technological advances in the future? Well, there's what one hopes for and what happens. Of course, like everyone else, I hope for 3D television and fantastic robots I can have sex with that then turn into marvellous things that clean my room, you know? I mean, I'm a human being. Naturally, I want slavish satisfaction. I want joy and pleasure to be brought to my machines. But I also love connection, the connections it makes with others. Yes, I think I'm worried, like everybody else, with threats to privacy. I'm worried about the fact that one day the machine may stop and we're all so dependent on it that we won't know what to do with ourselves, that we literally will find our lives turned all about and we will not really know how to cope. So my hope for technology is that it will continue to be free and open, and that it will be predominated as it is at the moment, not by business, not by political interest, not by religious fundamentalists and maniacs, but by the general sum of humanity that I take, in my foolishness, to be good and enlightened for the most part. I know there are so many millions who aren't, but for the moment that is one of the pleasures of the internet, or at least the internet I see. I know there are dark and hideous, slimy corners of it, but one's able to avoid them. I'm always saying that the internet's like a city, and any great city, of course, has its slums and its red light districts and its weird temples and strange churches, but it also has such grand cultural palaces and such remarkable museums and libraries and places of entertainment and shops and stores and exciting parks.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for talking to us here on the Skeptic Zone podcast. If you would like to learn more about the further adventures of Stephen Fry, you can head to his official site at www.stephenfry.com, and you can always find him on Twitter at www.twitter.com/Stephen Fry.
You're listening to The Skeptic Zone. I'm Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com. When I'm not tuned into The Skeptic Zone, I'm recording the Skeptoid podcast, doing what I can to further knowledge by blasting away the widespread pseudosciences that infect popular culture. I've also compiled a 40-minute educational video on critical thinking called Here Be Dragons at herebedragonsmovie.com. I hope you check those out, and I hope you enjoy The Skeptic Zone.
Hello, Dr. Raichi.
Now it's time for Dr. Raichi Reports with Dr. Rachel Dunlop.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Dr. Raichi Reports. On Sunday evening in Australia, the Channel 7 show Sunday Night aired a story about the tragic death of 4-week-old Dana McCaffrey from whooping cough. Dana was too young to be vaccinated, but lived in an area where levels of vaccination are low, hence herd immunity is compromised. Dana likely contracted the illness because other people in the area were not vaccinated. The report on Channel 7 was overwhelmingly science-based and accurate with respect to the consequences of not vaccinating your kids. In a sadly rare case of responsible scientific journalism, the facts, such as a whooping cough epidemic in New South Wales, the rise of measles, and the irresponsible behaviour of the anti-vax lobby, were laid out. And the story was heartbreaking. The response following the report going to air was both positive and negative, but overwhelming. The anti-vax lobby mobilised to flood the station with complaints about one-sided journalism, propaganda from Big Pharma, and demands for them to have their say. This has resulted in a forum for this week's show where anti-vaxxers and supporters of science will have an opportunity to address a panel of experts. Today, I speak with the producer of the story, Rebecca Latorno, about the response and why she made a decision to take a science-based approach when many would succumb to the pressures of the anti-vax lobby. Hello, Rebecca. Welcome to the Skeptic Zone.
Hello, nice to be with you.
Now, firstly, let me congratulate you on a well-researched and scientifically accurate report on the dangers of not vaccinating children.
Oh, thank you very much for that. We really set out to try and give people the best possible information available. It's a confusing landscape out there, especially for new parents, and we just wanted to give them the actual facts of the matter.
Well, there's been such a massive response to your story, and can you tell us how significant it's been and what kind of feedback you've been getting?
It's been enormously significant from what we can see. I think I have to at this point take my hat off and thank enormously Tony and David McCaffrey, who incredibly bravely, at a time when they were in extreme grief, agreed to speak with us on national television and gave us so much of their time to help people understand what is the emotional side of this, and that is the tragic loss of a child to a preventable disease. So that's the first thing. And I think when you're trying to get out to a mass audience important scientific and factual information, it helps if you can, show them where that sits in life and people's life experience. So that was incredibly useful for us. And of course then Professor Peter McIntyre from the Centre for Immunisation Research and Surveillance, who has studied and been involved with and saturated in this issue for many, many years, was enormously helpful in giving us the correct figures and the correct situation around the world. And then, of course, Dr. Chris Ingle, who is the paediatrician who's worked for 20 years on the north coast, the far north coast, and has been submerged in this horrific decline in vaccination levels and is absolutely tearing his hair out. So between the three of those, or the four including David and Tony, we were able to put together something that was not only digestible for a mass audience but full of the right facts. There was a very, very large response from people who were grateful for two reasons. Firstly, because they were pro-vaccination or they were in the medical or scientific community. And secondly, parents who were just genuinely confused. And being new parents, being sleep-deprived, being uninformed, were genuinely confused and concerned. And they thanked us. And I thought that actually made an enormous difference with the story.
Well, I assume that the debate, which is going to be screened this Sunday, Rebecca, is a direct result of this. But I understand you made a decision to only include people on the expert panel who had a scientific or medical background. And can you tell us why you made this decision?
Well, I think it stands out that the way we need to approach this is looking at the figures and the facts that show us that vaccination on a mass scale with herd immunity sustained can completely eradicate, for example, in terms of smallpox, a preventable disease, and lower the death rates and lower the rates of misery and suffering that people go through to an enormous degree. These are epidemics which could rear their heads again. Whooping cough and measles have. Polio could be next, and for God's sake, for us to go back to the days of polio would be the greatest travesty in health ever.
Dana's parents, Tony and David, will be in the audience. I wonder how that's going to play out, and it's obviously very brave of them to be able to do that.
It is incredibly brave, and they spent several days thinking about it, and I was happy to give that to them. They are the bravest people I've met in a very long time, because their little baby only died just over 6 weeks ago now. So they're in incredible grief, and they are most concerned that Tony was in a hospital in a region where there was a whooping cough epidemic. Now, these are intelligent, educated people. I mean, she was doing everything up to the tiniest of, taking folate, for example, one is something that many pregnant women never bother to do. So doing all of the right things. She at no stage was informed that there was a whooping cough epidemic. She was not told to be screened herself or her husband or anybody that came in touch with the new baby. They did not know about the fact that you're supposed to have a whooping cough booster every 10 years as an adult. They had absolutely no idea and no warning at all. And that's another important message that they want to get out. We need a coordinated and fierce federal attempt to make sure that people are informed about these diseases and what they can do to protect themselves and their children. Dana McCaffrey did not need to die. If Tony had been better informed, if the community had been better informed, that little baby would be alive today.
Well, Rebecca, the international response to your story has been overwhelmingly positive. The scientific and medical community are right behind you. We have to say we were all very nervous when we sat down in front of our televisions on Sunday. We had our blogs poised and our VCRs ready, but we were absolutely thrilled that your report was so well based in science and so well presented, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and thanks to everybody who responded. It is important. I mean, vaccination is a victim of its own success in many ways. When nothing happens, then it's succeeded and nobody really gets involved. So for everybody, and to everybody that did respond, thank you so much. It makes it so worthwhile for us, and it just means that the right messages are out there in quantity, and that's most important. Thank you very much. We'll be continuing to do this sort of work.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
My pleasure, Rachel.
Myself and Richard Saunders will be in the audience for the Sunday Forum, asking questions of the panel. Australians can watch Channel 7 Sunday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this Sunday, hosted by Mike Munro and Chris Barth. There are parts of this interview I couldn't play to you today for reasons I will explain next week. Tune in next time to hear the full unedited version. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
You're listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. If you wish to support our volunteer-run show, donate via PayPal at our website. Simply head to www.skepticzone.tv and know that your generous donation goes straight into maintaining and improving the show. Thanks for helping out the Skeptic Zone.
Well, here we are at the Maritime Museum here in Sydney, and we're at the Charles Darwin exhibition.
Yes, we are, Richard. This is the exhibition set up for Darwin's 200th birthday, which was last year.
Yes. And if we walk down the... Oh, sounds of the Galapagos, maybe.
Or is that the ship?
Not sure.
Sounds like George Harab's impersonation of the Galapagos blue-footed boobies.
Does it?
Did you hear that?
No, I haven't. I must hear it.
He does a great impersonation of blue-footed boobies
Does
mating. He? Yes. And I'm sure it sounds stranger on the just when you hear the audio when you don't see the actual footage. It's very unusual.
So we're walking down this little pathway now, and this sort of big... Oh, you can see... Oh, I see.
Oh, he has gone... Yeah, there is a pathway.
There's a
went
huge
to the Galapagos.
Upside-down map of the world showing where Darwin went. So he came to New Zealand, Sydney, where I know he traipsed around a bit. Then he went to Hobart and...
King George Sound, somewhere near
Western Australia.
Albany, perhaps.
Wow. And then he continued on. What a trip. So he didn't... Steve Roberts is with us, and... G'day, Steve. Enjoying the exhibition?
Yeah, there's no mention of Melbourne in it.
Well, he wasn't there.
No, Melbourne wasn't there.
Oh, Melbourne wasn't there. All right. And so we walked down along the map here, which goes for quite a long way. He visited Cape Town, South Africa. Ah.
You hear stories about what it was like on sailing ships. Yeah. This is quite a nice room, considering.
Now, we've come across a little display here, which is a recreation of Charles Darwin's little cabin on the Beagle. It's quite interesting. It's a little table, big enough for two people to sit at, with some scientific-looking equipment on top of it. The room is only a couple of metres long and very short. It's much shorter than I am, so it's, about 5'5" tall, something like that.
Which is a problem, Richard, because Darwin was 1.8 metres tall.
He's a tall man. Oh, yes, it says there. And there's a hammock strung across the room right above the back of the table, sort of latched to a shelf at one side and a bookshelf on the other. And if we press this little button, we can hear Charles Darwin's thoughts about his room, his cabin.
Beagle, Devonport, December the 4th, 1831. I'm writing this for the first time on board. It is now about 1 o'clock, and I intend sleeping in my hammock. I did so last night, but experienced a most ludicrous difficulty in getting into it. My great fault of jockeyship was in trying to put my legs in first. The hammock being suspended, I thus only succeeded in pushing it away without making any progress in inserting my own body. The correct method is to sit accurately in the centre of the bed, then give yourself a dexterous twist, and your head and feet come into their respective places. After a little time, I dare say I shall, like others, find it very comfortable. I have spent the day partly on board and partly with my brother. In the evening, Captain King and son, Stokes, my brother and myself dined with Captain Fitzroy. In the morning the ship rolled a good deal, but I did not feel uncomfortable. This gives me great hopes of escaping seasickness. I find others trust in the same weak support. May we not be confounded. It is very pleasant talking with officer on watch at night. Everything is so quiet and still, nothing interrupts the silence but the half-hour bells. I will go now and wish Stewart, the officer on duty, a good night, and then for practising my skill in vaulting into my hammock.
Not a bad exhibition, and good to see that they've got it here at the Maritime Museum in Sydney, and I think it's on for a couple more weeks or months.
I'm not sure, Richard.
Anyway, it's free. It's just near Darling Harbour, so we can recommend people come to visit. Now, if we keep looking, we might be able to find the birthday cake.
Hello, Richard Saunders here. You may wish to edit out the following statement and use it in your own podcast, or you can go to the website of the Skeptic Zone or the Young Australian Skeptics, or even Phil Plate's Bad Astronomy, and download and print out the poster which says the same thing. This is a statement about swine flu and homeopathy. Swine flu scam alert. With the growing worldwide threat of swine flu, or the H1N1 virus, the public is alerted to various fake or scam products purporting to be either
treatments or preventatives for this deadly disease. These fake treatments go under the banner of homeopathic medicines. There is no effective homeopathic treatment or preventative for swine flu or any other flu strain. Homeopathic treatments are nothing more than sugar pills or water and are in fact the same as placebos, fake medicine used in medical research. They contain nothing. Do not get conned by anyone selling homeopathic treatment for swine flu, meningococcal meningitis, or any other serious or life-threatening disease. These people are putting you and your family's health at great risk. You are encouraged to report any such scammers to your government's health department. If you are concerned about swine flu, seek the advice of a qualified medical doctor. This message has been brought to you by the Skeptic Zone podcast and the Young Australian Skeptics.
I was incredibly fortunate to attend the world premiere of the new Star Trek film at the Sydney Opera House. Director J.J. Abrams, well known for being the creator of Lost and Alias, was in attendance with most of the leading cast. As a long-time Trekkie, when I heard about the development of this film, I was excited but also very wary. Would it live up to expectations? I'm happy to report the film is a triumph. Many film critics thought the Star Trek franchise was dead after Star Trek Nemesis tanked at the box office in 2002. However, J.J. Abrams has given the franchise a new lease of life. The new Star Trek feature is fast-paced, full of action, and has some delightfully cheeky humour. The special effects are excellent, and the performances are great. Chris Pine is remarkably good as Kirk, and Zachary Quinto fits the role of Spock nicely.
Who are you?
I'm with him. He's with me.
We are traveling at warp speed. How did you manage to beam aboard this ship?
Hey, you're the genius. You figure it out.
As acting captain of this vessel, I order you to answer the question.
Well, I'm not telling, acting captain. What now? That doesn't frustrate you, does it? My lack of cooperation. That doesn't make you angry.
Are you a member of Starfleet?
Yes. Can I get a towel?
Under penalty of court-martial, I order you to explain to me how you were able to beam aboard this ship while moving at warp.
Well, don't answer him.
You will answer me.
Carl Urban is impressive as Dr. McCoy, and Eric Barner is energetic as the nasty villain Nero. Simon Pegg is slightly underutilised as Scotty, but steals every scene he is in. This film will appeal to old fans and create a legion of new ones as well. It's great to see this classic sci-fi franchise reborn and boldly go where no one has gone before.
The wait is over.
Hi, I'm Jason.
And I'm Andrew from the Nonsense Podcast.
Bringing you a skeptical overview of news, religion, and all forms of pseudoscience.
We're defending science and reason against the onslaught of medical and spiritual nonsense.
All week, we are busy researching and debunking pseudoscience. But on the seventh day, we listen to the Skeptic Zone.
Check us out at nonsensepodcast.libsyn.com or search for the Nonsense Podcast on iTunes.
Well, I'm here outside the Downing Centre, which is a very large law courts here in Sydney. And our good friend Ian Bryce is about to appear to defend his Pope-mobile. You may have heard about. He had a fake Pope-mobile when the Pope was here, and the police had him on a charge of having a roof ornament likely to cause distraction. So Ian's come here to defend this, and he's brought some placards with him. And the media have pounced. He is absolutely covered with cameras and microphones and all the media here. He's getting a lot of coverage. And he's got some friends here from the Skeptics and other people here to support him. And now they're just marching off to go and get some more coverage. In fact, the film crews are going to film them walking up the street. Okay, now Ian's now being interviewed by the Nine Network for their nightly news program, I imagine. Quite amazing. Quite amazing. Next to
another paparazzo.
Yeah,
paparazzi everywhere.
John Sweetman and Steve Roberts here, who are helping Ian. It's an extraordinary outcome.
Well, it's what we do, you know. We're trying to protest about having the freedom to have a roof ornament depicting the Pope. And
it's quite a ridiculous charge, really. I mean, they must have really scraped the bottom of the barrel to come up with that.
Yeah,
it's clearly a violation of free speech.
I think so, but this is extraordinary that all the camera crews would pounce on Ian,
absolutely.
Isn't it?
I mean, it's a huge media scrum, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
I hope it gets through, though. On the news, they might bump it for swine flu or something.
Well, there's nobody else worth filming this morning.
That's right. They were all waiting for somebody else who probably didn't arrive, you know.
Well, there was a big queue of people went in behind our backs, you know, the mafia and the police and God knows who, all went in unfilmed, you know, because it's a plot, I tell you. You know,
it is.
We're pawns in a game. You know.
Now, I've actually managed to corner Ian Bryce, got him away from the rest of the media. Ian, that was a very successful little campaign right now.
Yes, we tried to make our point to protect free speech and to make sure that the police don't misuse their powers.
That's very good, and I noticed that most of the media here were talking to you and filming you and interviewing you.
Yes, that's good to see.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the fourth court appearance we've had. In the other court appearances, we were trying to get information on the charges from the police, but they haven't provided anything. So finally, the registrar said last time that we have to go ahead anyway. So this is coming to a hearing today.
So now I guess we all should march up to the court and see what happens.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Okay.
It's all over. The police withdrew their case, and we're looking for the media. Now, Mr. Bryce, at last I can interview you. Well done, a victory.
Thanks, Richard. Yes, that was a great success for free speech and civil liberties, I believe.
Yeah, so basically the police just withdrew the case in the end.
Yes, indeed. After they realised that they were up against the Council for Civil Liberties and it's their job to protect civil liberties in New South Wales, I think and he pointed out to them that the original charge, which was having a roof ornament likely to distract, there is in fact no such statute or regulation or anything. It was just made up.
Yeah.
So the police changed it to causing an unreasonable annoyance to persons, which is in fact clause 22 of the regulations. So, however, my representation, my lawyers pointed out that in fact they can't change the charge 9 months after the event on the way into court and expect it to stand up.
So your website again is?
www.worldtruthday.org.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Richard.
Hello, this is James Randi, if you haven't guessed already. I'm very pleased to announce that registration is now officially open for the Amazing Meeting 7, the biggest and best critical thinking conference in the world, to be held from July 9th through the 12th, 2009, at the beautiful South Point Casino, Hotel and Spa in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is a change in venue that will better accommodate the size of crowd we got last year, just short of 900 skeptics of all sizes, ages, shapes, ethnicity, homelands, and degrees of enthusiasm. This July, our speakers will include the ubiquitous Michael Shermer from the Skeptic Society, our good friend Adam Savage of the Mythbusters, our president Phil Plait from the Bad Astronomy blog, of course, Jennifer Ouellette from the Science and Entertainment Exchange, and the Penn and Teller duo, and of course, moi. Our keynote speaker this year will be Bill Prady, executive producer of the hit television show The Big Bang Theory, and he'll tell us about how he's helped make it cool to be an accredited official nerd. We'll also have our usual stellar panels, workshops, and after-hours entertainment, including a mentalism act by a well-known, bearded, and cranky skeptic you may know and love. He'll be offering his audience a couple of brand new mental wonders that have not been shown before, even to the magicians of the world. Those who attend TAM 7 will also witness an actual real-time test for our world-famous Challenge Prize, an actual scientific, statistically correct, carefully controlled test which may lead to the awarding of the $1 million prize. This is just not to be missed. For more information, go to amazingmeeting.com. That's amazingmeeting.com to get all the information on this amazing event. As always, this is James Randi, still amazing, and I hope to see you there in Las Vegas at the Amazing Meeting 7.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
And welcome to the Think Tank. It's a huge think tank tonight. But first of all, Dr. Raichi. Dr. Raichi, what a great interview of Stephen Fry we had earlier.
Wasn't that fantastic? Isn't he wonderful, Richard?
And, folks, he is such a genuinely nice guy. He really is.
He is. He's very, very generous with his time and with his time and his time. Yeah. No, we were so happy to get Stephen Fry, and he was so generous to talk to us, and what a wonderful, wonderful man.
Thank you, Stephen Fry. Thank you very much indeed. And as I said before, what a think tank we have tonight. I mean, our table is full.
It is.
Our table is full, and we've got 3 new people. In fact, what I'll do is I'll get everybody to introduce themselves just quickly, starting with...
Fleur.
Yes, Fleur. You've been on the show briefly before.
I might have, yes.
Yeah, months ago when I was at the festival in Newtown, and you were at the atheist stand, and there was a bell, and we were ringing the bell.
What was I?
Yes, you were.
I didn't remember.
You don't remember? That's what the impression I make of people.
I was too busy handing out toys, I think, to little kids.
Now, what can you tell our audience about yourself, Fleur, just briefly?
I've done a bit of science, I've done a bit of nursing, I now do a bit of real estate. I know a bit of everything. And I've just got back from Hawaii.
Lucky Fleur.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
All right, and...
I'm Ian.
Ian.
Yes, and I do the Diffusion Science Radio podcast.
And what's the website for that?
It's www.diffusionradio.com.
Diffusionradio.com.
That's right.
Listeners, please check that out. Thank you for coming along to the Think Tank. And finally, I'll bring the microphone over here. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, and you are?
I'm Diane.
You're from Twitter, aren't you?
I am from Twitter.
You're known as Diane _
That's right. I'm actually real. I exist.
Diane _ from Twitter. Hello, thank you for coming along.
No problem.
And you've been living in Australia for many years, but I think you're originally from the Netherlands.
Ja, ik kom oorspronkelijk uit Nederland, but I've been living in Australia for the last 10 years.
You know, I asked her to get a bit of Dutch in, and I think she did.
I did.
Can you say in Dutch, welcome to the Skeptic Zone or something?
Van harte welkom met luisteren naar de Skeptic Zone.
All our Dutch listeners have just gone into raptures over that. Now, Dr. Raichi, let's kick off with a very important issue.
Yeah, we shall. Some of our listeners may have, who follow me on Twitter or who follow my blog, theskepticsbook.com, may be aware of a story that I blogged about on Sunday night, which was a pro-vaccination story, in fact, on Channel 7 in Australia on a show called Sunday Night. Now, you and I both watched that, and then I blogged it, and we sent it to a couple of our very special friends to ask for help, because it turned out to be a really pro-vaccination story, which was really, really great. And I have to say, Richard, I was a little bit nervous. I really was nervous sitting down watching it, because they had sort of promos on for it leading up to it, but it wasn't really easy to ascertain whether it was going to be negative or, you know. And we have, unfortunately, like a lot of countries around the world, we do have our anti-vax movement. They're not as bad as the McCarthys and Careys of this world or the Jenny Barnetts of the UK, but we have them. And I was very surprised and very relieved to see that this story was very much on the science side. It was actually really quite responsible scientific reporting. It was well researched and it was well presented.
And it didn't equivocate. It
no.
was absolutely clear.
I mean, it started off with the host of Sunday Night saying, this debate stops here. That's it. There is no longer a debate. And it was centred around the death of Dana McCaffrey, who was 4 weeks old and she died of pertussis or whooping cough. So it was a heart-wrenching story, and I sent my blog to Phil Plate and asked if he could help us, and Kylie Sturgis sent it to PZ Myers at Pharyngula, and they both very generously wrote up the story and linked to my blog, and we had a huge response from all over the world. People writing to me and writing to Phil and writing to PZ and saying how wonderful it was that we had this really good, positive, science, accurate vaccination story.
Just as an aside, I put the video of that story up on my YouTube channel.
Yes.
And as of just before coming here, it's something like 5,000 hits or something ridiculous.
Well, yesterday it was the second highest viewed video in Australia.
Yeah.
Is that right? On
That's
YouTube?
Right. Absolutely, yeah.
We've had an absolutely overwhelming response, and most of it has been incredibly positive, and I've been very encouraged and very happy that is what happened, because you and I worked very hard on Sunday to get this out there, and Kylie as well. Thanks, Kylie. There's an addendum to this story, and listeners, hold on to your seats, because many of you may recall that I implored you to email the station and congratulate them on this story, and also to congratulate the reporter Rebecca Madden for a well-researched story. Well, as I expected, and unfortunately I have to report that the other side have, as I suspected, flooded the emails at Channel 7. The reaction has been that Channel 7 have decided to have a forum this coming Saturday because they were accused of not presenting the other side fairly. Richard's currently hitting himself in the head with a pen.
I'm hitting myself in the head with a pen. Now, this is. I don't need to tell listeners the fallacy here, but it's like saying that a network or some outlet would give equal time to the Holocaust deniers.
Exactly.
Because the story wasn't balanced.
Yeah.
The people at the channel, at the network, all they know is, lots of interest, let's have another go at this. More ratings.
Yeah, I mean, we happen to have a friend who is able to be privy to what the Australian Vaccination Network were represented as the other side on this show, and they have a Yahoo group, and a friend of mine has access to what their exchanges on there in secret. And she came across she witnessed their response immediately following the airing of the program.
And what did they say, Rachel?
Oh, they said really positive things, Richard.
Did they?
They did.
Do tell.
They said such things as, this was the worst ever representation of our organisation ever. It was worse than I feared. It was the most one-sided story I've ever seen. The look on the face of that feral woman interviewing you, referring to Meryl Dorey, who was being interviewed, was just disgusting. This is all on my blog, people. Go to skepticsfoot.com. I've written it. It's all transcribed there. They did. So that's their level of behaviour.
Now, is this the same Australian Vaccination Network who have stated on national television that people do not, or babies do not, die from measles or whooping cough?
This is the exact same one who on Sunday night during this report by Rebecca Madden said that, and it was juxtaposed with a picture of a dead baby.
Don't tell me, is this the same Australian Vaccination Network who have stated publicly that if you pump large amounts of vitamin C into people, you can alleviate most emergency situations at the emergency ward of the hospital?
This is the same Australian Vaccination Network. The ones that if you ask them if they've got an amputated limb, does vitamin C help then? They have no answer. Yes, you're correct.
Like the faith healers. Oh dear.
Anyway, Richard, a friend of ours received a call today from Channel 7 about this forum.
If you're listening to this show after the 1st of May 2009...
It's finished.
And we'll let you know what happened. But, Rachel, is this the same Australian Vaccination Network that said you can treat whooping cough with homeopathy?
Richard,
yes.
Finally, you've had a good segue. I can't believe it. And yes, it is. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Now, a lot of our listeners would be aware of, obviously our listeners are aware of the swine flu epidemic that's going on at the moment. And I noticed Edzard Ernst tweeted a couple of days ago, when it all started to explode, that he was wondering how long it would take before the alternative medicine people would jump on this bandwagon, and the homeopaths in particular, he cited, would start coming up with cures for swine flu. Now, I came across an interesting article today. I think a lot of our listeners would know of the newspaper, the Huffington Post. Have you guys heard of the Huffington Post?
Yes.
It's an American newspaper. And I believe, Ian, and you can tell me if this is correct, that it's supposed to be kind of liberal and a little bit sort of left-wing.
A little bit progressive, yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Well, Anyway, the Huffington Post published a blog today from a lady by the name of Kim Evans, and it was about how to protect yourself and your loved ones from swine flu. And she covered the basics of, don't go out to public places unnecessarily. If there's an outbreak in your area, wash your hands, don't touch your face, blah, blah, blah. And then she said that it's all that stuff's all pretty basic, but the other thing you can really do is you should deep cleanse yourself, because that can actually save your life.
What?
Well, Richard, let me quote from her blog at Huffington Post. Let me explain why, and to help you understand, I'm going to provide an analogy. Your trash is overflowing and you have flies. You can approach this problem in a couple of ways. You can get some bug spray and attempt to kill the flies, but there's a good chance you'll find that they just keep coming back. And you'll also have polluted the air around your house. So, what should you do, Richard?
What?
You should give yourself a colonic irrigation.
I thought you'd never ask.
Now,
you're not giving me a bum's rush here, right?
Oh, there's the bad joke. So this lady, Kim Evans, she wrote a book called Cleaning Up! Richard just spat champagne out of his nose. She's quite prolific as a blogger in the Huffington Post, but I had a look into her credentials today, and I actually posted this on Facebook, and I got some pretty hilarious responses from people. I suspected she might be a homeopath, as we alluded to earlier, so I checked on her website, and it turns out that she became interested in cleansing when she was visiting an international country or a foreign country and decided to get a cleanse on a whim.
Oh.
As you do.
On a whim, right? And so then, on a whim, she wrote a book called Cleaning Up. And then it says on her website that she did lots of research on different areas of cleansing, and she now realises that, the toxins in your body are the problem, and you must clean out your colon to be healthy.
I know what she did it. Princess Di factor. The Princess Di factor. She did it.
She did it?
Yeah. Oh, she was big.
Now, she also says that she says you need to do... She uses the whole Candida overgrowth fungus line, which they all use, and says that you need to deep cleanse to save yourself from swine flu. So, but I think you have some more information about...
I think you have it over there. We found just a funny note about the swine flu, if there can be a funny note. I've got an article here saying that swine flu is not kosher in Israel, and there are people within the Israeli government wanting to call swine flu Mexican flu. Now, if I was Mexican, I would be highly insulted about that.
Why did they choose Mexican? Because it originated in Mexico?
Well, that's where it's sort of really
that's where
big
it kind of took off?
Yeah. So swine flu is now Mexican flu if you're in Israel, and that's pretty silly. But if you're referring to...
I was referring back to homeopathy.
Now, I mean, we do discuss homeopathy from time to time, and by and large, until now, we've sort of treated it as a bit silly,
and a bit
it does
annoying.
No harm, a bit annoying. We all know it doesn't work. Now, homeopathy is really proving itself to be a particular and real danger.
It is.
It's no longer this funny, silly system that doesn't work.
No, it's not.
It's gone beyond.
I mean, last week I think I was laughing with you because Le Canadinois, who is a blogger and a Twitterer, posted a picture of a homeopathy person from a BBC documentary, and our English friends would have seen this. We can't watch the BBC in Australia because we haven't paid our TV licence, even though the Queen runs our country, apparently. We can't access BBC
Over
stuff.
the internet, you mean?
Yes. Yeah. No, but it's true because we haven't paid our TV licence. If I'm wrong, English listeners, send me an email.
They can't watch the ABC either.
Can't they?
No, it's blocked. The same way.
It's blocked as well.
Insane.
But we're all in the Commonwealth.
It's copyright stuff. They're not allowed to... Basically, they're licensed to show stuff in Australia, but it's different licenses with different costs to show it overseas, and it might cut revenue.
I have one word for that. Torrents. Go on, Rachel.
Right, thank you. Well, anyway, I digress. But You and I have been looking at this website for quite some time. It's called Homeopathy Plus. It's based in Australia.
Oh, Homeopathy Plus.
Now, you subscribe to their
I get their
mailing
newsletter.
list, don't you, Richard? Yeah. And
Thank you, cretins at Homeopathy Plus, for sending me your information.
They sent you an email today, didn't they? And it's entitled Greetings. This urgent update is to keep you informed about the potentially deadly swine flu and how homeopathy can help. Currently, homeopaths are networking...
You should see all the heads around the table shaking at the moment.
Yeah. Currently, homeopaths are networking around the world to cross-match the symptoms of this flu with the remedies that it will treat. Anyway, they said that they've opened this new section of their website called Flu Watch, which they will update regularly. Now, what they're saying, Richard, is that conventional medicine currently has no way of preventing the swine flu. Now, this is true at the moment because the vaccine that we currently have for the flu is not designed for swine flu. But they have something that's called Flu Stop, and they said that this, if you have some of this, it contains most of the common remedies used to treat and prevent flu symptoms.
Prevent?
Yes. Treat and prevent.
Symptoms.
Yes.
All right, let's boil this down to what they're really trying to flog people. They're trying to tell people if they buy their witchcraft, they can be either treated for or protected from swine flu.
Well, they're saying symptoms, yeah. I guess the inference, yeah, okay. I mean, the point we're trying to make here is that we actually have reported this website to the TGA.
How long ago?
Loretta Marin actually submitted the complaint for me to the complaints resolution panel maybe 2 months ago.
And it's
6
still
weeks. The complaint that we submitted to the TGA, which is the Therapeutic Goods Administration, was their page that says that they sell vaccination against meningococcal disease.
And they still do. It's right there.
That's correct,
we
they
printed
do.
it out today.
Yeah.
They're still saying that they can give you homeopathic inoculation against meningococcal.
Well, technically it's called homeoprophylaxis, but what they say on their website is that there are currently 13 strains of meningococcal identified. There are 2 vaccines developed by science. They can cover the rest of the strains. Now, we submitted this to the TGA. We got a letter back saying, we've got your complaint, we're processing it, blah, blah, blah. In the meantime, that information is still on the website.
Yeah.
Now, we're leading into winter in Australia. That's the season for meningococcal. I bang on about this all the time, how it's a rapid onset, deadly, high mortality bacterial infection.
Well, then we have to do, and what we're doing now is what James Randi did with Peter Popoff. He went to the authorities. They wouldn't pay any attention to Randi, so he went to a higher authority. He went to Johnny Carson.
Yeah, Johnny Carson, help.
Johnny Carson passed away
Yeah,
many years ago.
Dr. Phil, help. Oprah's on Twitter. Can I send her a direct message?
Not Oprah.
No, she's a woo. I know she's woo.
Dr. Phil Plates, however.
Ah.
Hi, Dr. Phil.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Phil. All right. I think our audience can well understand our concerns. I know this is a little bit more serious than we usually have the think tank.
Do we have any funny stories?
We do.
Funny. I have a funny story.
You have a funny story?
Yes.
All right, go on.
I want to give a shout out to Reed Braden. Now, Reed is one of the members of the 2 Smoking Hot Free Thinkers podcast. And a couple of weeks ago, he sort of was in a little bit of strife in terms of funding his podcast. So he put out a call for people to send him donations. And as a part of that, if you if you were the quickest person to submit a donation, you got to name his podcast. Now, Richard's putting his hands over his face now. Why are you doing that, Richard?
Kylie, thank you.
Well, actually, I think Kylie Sturgis and maybe Joel Birch. Was it Joel Birch also won the rights to name his podcast for 4 weeks? So I think they get 2 weeks each. But Kylie's up first, and the name of Reed Braden's podcast, which is normally 2 Smoking Hot Free Thinkers, is going to be, Does Richard Saunders' bum look big in this podcast?
I think no, it doesn't. I was going to say no.
She's looking at it now, listeners, so she knows. Perhaps we should set up. Perhaps when it goes to air, we should set up a poll on skepticzone.tv, and you can vote Richard's bum looks big in this podcast.
Hey, I've got another fun story. Right, I'm turning the microphone away from Rachel Dunlop. Yeah. I spilt my champagne. Okay, you other three people. Let's talk about this issue. There's a new movie coming out called The Skeptic.
Sounds good.
Oh, it sounds good, doesn't it? Yeah. It's about a skeptic, surprise, surprise, who doesn't believe in anything, no ghosts, no nothing, no, it's all rubbish, it's all psychological tricks. Now, in the real universe, he's on the money. He really is, I think. But in the wonderful fake imagination and fictitious universe of the movies, he actually gets shown up to be a silly skeptic because, yes, there are ghosts.
I've seen the trailer to this film, actually.
Has anybody seen the trailer to this film?
I haven't.
No?
I've seen it.
You've seen it, yeah.
And is it definitely real ghosts and not somebody trying to fool him?
Well, you can't tell from the trailer.
I wonder.
But I think that perhaps my impression of the trailer was that they just used the word skeptic as a misnomer. I think they were using it as sort
cynic.
Meaning a doubter or something, going in there.
No,
not as a.
According to the trailer, it's more than that. It is an absolutely die-hard believer. Now, what I mean by that is a lot of people regard skeptics as believers. In other words, we don't believe in ghosts or whatever, and that non-believing is in fact a belief.
Yeah.
And we won't believe in ghosts, and we won't believe in anything. We have a set mindset, which is not the case. Absolutely not.
No.
We're completely open-minded.
But he goes into this house and he has these visions and sees things, and then goes to his psychiatrist or psychologist and says, I saw this, how can you explain it?
Silly skeptic, huh?
Is that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the gist of the movie.
I don't think it's a skeptical movie.
That's a good question. If listeners would go to the Internet Movie Database, they can see when the movie The Skeptic is being released in their area.
You've got to be in line for free tickets for review. Surely you'd be in line to get free review tickets being involved with the Skeptics.
You'd think so.
Good publicity for them, even if you don't like it.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the phone call.
I'm still waiting for my pharmaceutical shill money.
Me too. And skeptic is spelled the American way, which is the way that we spell it too, actually, with a K.
Yeah.
With a K. That's all. So The Skeptic, it might be a lot of fun. I'll probably go and see it anyway.
Can I check Twitter? No, I'm just...
Withdrawal. What are you going to do?
Can I just check my Twitter?
Sure. Diane's got nomophobia.
No, but I must say that we are really grateful for our three new guests to come along here. It's really great to see everybody. What is your opinion? Now, Rachel and I are die-hard skeptics. We have been for ages now. We know the ropes. We're all there and everything. But you people are sort of a little bit outside of the loop, I guess you could say, and you sort of pick up things on the internet. How important has that been to forming your opinions? Fleur?
Pretty important. I mean, I troll a lot and read a lot, and I suppose I keep asking questions when I'm going around with people and things.
What do you use to keep up to date? Just emails, or do you go to blogs or forums or something?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of blogs. I'm starting to do a bit more, reading a bit more, but not usually. I'm finding I'm doing a bit more Twitter and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I get most of my news via my Google homepage, which I have set up with all the feeds coming in of different, prescribed to lots of different science reports and stuff like that, so I read a lot of that. And then I read a lot, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I'm travelling a lot at the moment.
You're a traveller.
Well, I've just got back from Hawaii and I'm just about to go around the world yet again.
And you're going to the amazing meeting, aren't you?
I haven't booked yet, but yes, I plan to. I'm leaving in 2 weeks. So
you will love it.
It should be fun, hopefully.
Thanks. Ian, what about you?
Well, I use the internet a lot, so I follow 300 to 400 people on Twitter, and there's a lot of information coming through. It's pre-filtered because all the skeptics and all the interesting people send you links of all the things they've found, and you can share what you've found. So I get a lot of information from there, and I still look at the blogs and RSS as well, and I get press releases sent in for the radio show.
Yeah.
So there's heaps. There's lots of information. So you can find out without, even just from Twitter. You could stay there all day just on Twitter, couldn't you?
I think you could, yeah.
Diane, I know you're on Twitter, of course. Diane
Yes,
underscore.
I am. Thank you. Yes, I am. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. I'm a behaviourist and I work with children with autism, and as a behaviourist, you look very objectively at things and you research and you make your treatment decisions based on the data that you get. But 80 to 90% of my clients actually have adjunct treatments. They do really anything else that is not really sciencey based. And I guess getting more into skepticism, I'm actually struggling a little bit to how to deal with that, with families dealing with children with autism and making treatment choices that I can't necessarily underwrite. And it's been tricky. So I've been reading up a lot more, and it's good to see your perspective and the skeptic side perspective, but I can also see very desperate parents. So it's very interesting for me to see both sides. Yes.
Interesting. Now, let's give a big plug for everybody's Twitter. I think we've mentioned your Twitter about 6 times already.
Diane underscore?
Diane, is it? Diane underscore.
Diane
Yeah.
underscore.
And your Twitter?
I'm Ian Wolfe with 2 O's.
Well, I'm Goddess Fleur.
Of course you are, Fleur.
I was trying to come up with a good one.
I'm just boring Rachel Dunlop.
With an A.
With an A, RSCHAEL.
And of course, if you want to follow the show itself, the Skeptic Zone show, it's
Skeptic Zone.
Skeptic
One
Zone.
word.
One word.
We should also mention that Australian Skeptics are on Twitter.
Yes, Australian Skeptics. The Rachel and I are both committee members, and I work on the magazine, of course. AUST, A-U-S-T,
Skeptics with a K.
With a K,
Yeah.
is the official Australian Skeptics Twitter. So please...
Actually, if you head there, or if you head to my account or your account, you can find everyone that you need to follow. Don't you?
I think so.
Yeah.
Including Stephen Fry.
Yes, including Stephen Fry.
Including Stephen Fry.
You will not find Oprah, listeners.
And Robert Llewellyn, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I really enjoy following Robert Llewellyn, who played Crichton in Red Dwarf.
And Edzard Ernst is now on Twitter. He's so cute on Twitter.
He's nice, isn't he?
He seems to want to use up his 140 characters, irrespective of how many words he's got. So he'll fill up his space with exclamation marks. He's so sweet. And he gets so cranky that he doesn't have a gap between words. He gets almost, sometimes he gets like one of those cranky believers who's just, can't turn off caps lock and just like, homeopathy is stupid. Oh, Richard, we have to give a big shout out to one of our loyal listeners.
Who's that?
Joel Birch.
Joel Birch,
it's
why?
It's his birthday today.
Is it? When we're recording this, yes.
It is, yeah. I mean, it will be a few days later when this
Happy
goes out.
Happy birthday, Joel, for a few days ago.
Happy birthday, Joel.
Happy birthday, Joel.
And to wrap up this wonderful think tank with our great new participants here tonight, Diane, would you like to wrap it up for our international audience?
Hartelijk bedankt voor het luisteren naar de Think Tank van de Skeptic Zone.
If you're looking for research on skepticism and women, gender issues, the facts about superstition, education, and the wonder of science, head to www.podblack.com, the site of Podblack Cat. It's been described by Dr. Ben Goldacre as a blog that wins on timeliness, accuracy, relevance, and, well, rather silly names. www.podblack.com. And what do you think?
Richard, you've done it. You've outstripped yourself yet again with the biggest zone ever.
I think I'm going to have a lie down for a whole week And when I get up again, I'm going to listen to that show again.
And do it all again.
What a fantastic interview of Stephen Fry.
Yeah,
and Dr. Rachie pulling no punches.
No, she's pretty serious about that stuff, as she should be, as everyone should be.
Now, coming up in next week's show, we have a report of a ghost tour in Adelaide. Oh, yes. And we speak to the tour guide who's sort of into the bit of the paranormal.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Do we find ghosts? Find out.
Geez, let me think. I wonder if you do or not.
And we've got many more guests lined up over the coming weeks. And I think you're going to tell us a little bit about your trip to Hong Kong, maybe.
Yeah, I think we might do a little report on that next week. We'll see how we go. Digging up a few superstitions and things and villain hitters and stuff.
Villain hitters?
Villain hitters. Oh, yes, it's an amazing little thing. Thanks again. And thanks, listeners, for tuning in and giving us such great support. It's been really good to be a part of this.
Thanks, everybody. And we look forward to doing another show for you next week.
See you then, Richard. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone.